Calling to order the meeting of the Public Infrastructure and Utilities Committee. It is Wednesday, October 2nd at 3:51 p.m. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Balmer,
Present.
Alderwoman Keys, Alderwoman Velazquez,
Here.
Vice Chair Browning,
Present.
Chair Schweitzer,
Present.
Alderwoman Keys. We have 4 present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Quorum being present, we will move on to the approval of the minutes. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of Wednesday, September 18th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by the Alderman of the 5th, seconded by the Alderman of the 9th. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Balmer,
Aye.
Alderwoman Keys, Alderwoman Velazquez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Browning,
Aye.
Chair Schweitzer,
Aye.
Alderwoman Keys. We have 4 aye votes.
Thank you. With that, we have approved the motion of the Alderman from the 5th and approved the minutes of Wednesday, September 18th, 2024. We'll move on to board bills for review. Today we have just one board bill for review, board bill number 104. Okay. We're having a bunch of technology issues today, everyone. So if you missed anything that I've said so far, we'll work on the sound volume in the room.
Tough stuff.
We have approved the minutes, we have a quorum, and we are moving on to our board bills for review. Board bills for review today is number 104. This bill is on utility coordination. There is a presentation that folks should be able to see on the Zoom, and it's pulled up already. Madam Clerk, can you confirm? Okay, wonderful. I'll let you know when to advance the slide, Madam Clerk. So for those in the room who are looking at this on paper, the first slide is just a slide saying Board Bill number 104, informational presentation. Not planning on taking a vote today on this bill. This is about presenting the bill both to the committee and to the public, making sure that we know where we are with this process of moving this bill forward, and we are allowing the committee to ask questions as well. Next slide. To make sure that everyone's on the same page, we'll just move through the bill and talk about each section of the bill, where it came from, why it's there, and anyone who has questions, we can just save them for the end. So the first section, just the introduction. The Board Bill 104 does seek to repeal Ordinance 709-2024, commonly referred to as the Dig Once policy. That policy divides the city into a variety of different segments, and the Board of Public Service within that policy is responsible for coordinating which segments of the city are open for utility work at any given time. It is not something that is currently followed by the city. The city does not limit the permits that it gives out in various segments, like the board bill would suggest that it would. It does have some language in it about restoring the street to similar conditions in which the bill is left. Look at that. We have one screen working in the room. It's a beautiful day. So that is something we're seeking to repeal in order to put in a policy that is hopefully enforceable and something that can be followed by the city and by the utilities. Next slide. So the reason for this bill at this time, the city has, quite simply different standards and enforcement practices for utility excavations and patch requirements than surrounding municipalities. So therefore, we don't get the same results. Pictured here on this slide are some of the images of utility that has been done in the city of St. Louis. In the picture on the far left, you see a utility patch that is collapsing. The materials under it were not supportive of the concrete, and therefore it is causing a crater-like pothole in the middle of one of our streets. There's another one there in the middle where you can see a caving patch. This one was dyed black, though, which is a current standard in the city, to dye the concrete black to match the pavement around it. And then you can see the large utility trench in downtown where it runs the entire length of the street. There are surrounding municipalities that if that sort of work were done, the requirement would be for the utility to actually repair that entire lane of traffic, not just one long trench that causes some roadway conditions that are unsavory. So next slide. So the current policies and practices in the city of St. Louis, the policy that's on the books that is supposed to be governing our utility work is the Dig Once policy. Again, that divides the city a number of ways for utility work. That entire policy is supposed to be managed through the Board of Public Service. And I think that it was one of those really good ideas to try to address some of the issues that we're still dealing with today, but it was never really implemented. We never, in the city of St. Louis, never really divided permits that were approved into different sections, and it just hasn't been working that way. So what's happening in practice is that the utility companies are applying for a BPS permit for general right-of-way permitting, and then they apply to the streets department division rather for a excavation permit, which includes a fee calculation in that permit. Prior to 2019, there was a general practice in the city of St. Louis to collect funds for restoration of the right-of-way. I'm not sure where that is, if it's in an ordinance, and it has stalled since 2019, that collection of funds. Next slide. So again, moving section through the bill, the section 1 is repealing Dig Once. Section 2 is providing some definitions for different parts of the bill to make sure those things are clear. Some of the things that we've had flagged from the administration so far in terms of feedback is adding definitions for temporary repair, permanent repair. We had a wonderful meeting with Ameren earlier in this week, and they talked about the difference between embedding and ramping in terms of temporary plates that do go on top of the pavement here in St. Louis, and what other cities are requiring, and what kind of typical practices are for that sort of work. Next slide. Section 3 in the bill, Board Bill 104, is on the coordination between utilities. So the way it is right now does leave Board of Public Service as the main coordination agency, as it is in the current Dig Once policy. One of the flags from the administration is that it really should be within the streets department. We've also received that feedback from TrailNet that they would prefer all of this coordination within the streets department. So this is something that we plan to make a change in the upcoming committee substitute when we're ready to provide that it coordinated through the streets department as per the wishes of a variety of stakeholders. This section also comes from a series of meetings that the administration hosted with utility companies over the last several months, in which the administration had asked utility companies to provide their work plan for the next few years, so that more of this planning and mapping and coordination effort would be possible through the information that's actually available. So that's where that section comes from. That's just a little bit more of that section. And then the next slide, you're on the right slide. So the open trench notice, Section 4, open trench notice, is really from a policy that was created based on a policy from Berkeley, California. So what they do is they have utility companies notify each other when they're doing work in any area, and so there is an open trench where utilities are able to coordinate their work, so that if utilities are planning to do work, the cost of repairing, restoring, whatever word we end up using in this bill, is shared cost and is not just on a single utility. Also just allows for, better practice where work is being done in a more consistent manner on the street. Section 5, a moratorium on utility work. Oh, no, go back. Yes, ma'am. So Section 5, moratorium on utility work. It kind of a little messed around on the slides. Our apologies for how it's showing up on the screen right now. But the moratorium for Section 5 on utility work, part of that is based on a policy recently put in place in Kansas City in 2021, in which they do not allow utility work within 5 years of repaving of a street, unless it's an emergency repair. This is also something that a lot of constituents talk about when they see a street repaved in their neighborhood, and then see a utility cut soon after. So making sure that there is as much effort as possible given to have all of the needed work happen with utility work before a street is repaved. Next slide, please. We're still working on a lot of the language in Section 5. This is something that we've gotten a lot of feedback from utility providers about regarding emergency work, same conditions present prior to work, working through those definitions to make sure everyone understands what's being asked for. That's something that the administration and the utility companies have flagged for us. But it is something that, from ongoing conversations over the last few years with city staff, is something that it seems to be really important to make sure we implement somehow. Section 6, the responsibility of repair. Right now, the city of St. Louis is not really asking for very much when it comes to what the street looks like after our utility work is done. And municipalities in Missouri and throughout the country are asking for, and by asking for, I mean putting it in their standards, putting it in their ordinances, putting it in their practices and procedures for a much more and much better outcome for their users. So some nearby municipalities that have different standards where it puts the responsibility of repair almost entirely on the utility company instead of on the municipality are listed there: De Pere, Jefferson City, Lee Summit, Baldwin, Ferguson in Missouri, New York City. It's pretty common practice. Next slide. Adoption of standards. So the wanting to make sure that this bill is mirroring to the best of our ability policies of surrounding municipalities. We know the utility companies working in St. Louis don't just work in the city of St. Louis, they work across the state, they work across the region. So making sure that our standards are in line with the standards of surrounding municipalities, and frankly, that the city of St. Louis is getting just as good a deal when utilities do work on our streets as any other municipality in the region or state. So the first part of this section is adopting the Missouri State Department of Transportation MoDOT standards for repairs and restoration, as well as adding on some layers that were accepted in Kansas City, put in place in Kansas City in 2021. What's really important about that is, these are things that utility companies are already doing. They're doing in other cities, in other municipalities across the state, and we just need to change our standards to ask for the same thing. Next slide. So the embedding of street plates is something, again, that comes from Kansas City's legislation as well as surrounding municipalities. This is one where we want to make sure we have the definition and the word embedding as clear as possible so that we're being clear with utility companies what that means. Again, earlier I talked about a conversation with Ameren about ramping and asphalt around the plate, which just makes that when someone is driving down the street in our city, when they come over a plate, they're going to have a much smoother transition, hopefully not have damage caused to their car. I think the number one feedback we got from RAM settlement funds was people are sick of the city streets damaging their cars. So this is one of those ways that people's cars get damaged in the city of St. Louis and something that we can do about it. The next, section 9, permitting standards and language. This is taken from De Pere's standards and how much they ask for a deposit for utility work and how they bill for it. So they hold a deposit of what the estimated cost of the repair is to rectify issues possibly caused by the repair, so that if the utility provider does not repair the street to the standard that they were supposed to, the city would have the money to do that work. So this is something that was flagged for us in earlier conversations with some members of the administration about having the right enforcement pieces in place, and something that I think we need to improve upon in terms of enforcement of standards. Next slide. So this is where the bill is so far. This is very much a first draft. I've been clear with both the administration and the utility companies and with everyone on this committee that this is a first draft. This is the place to work from. As we went through each section, you could see where those sections were pulled from. Almost everything in here, with the exception of the open trench policy, is taken from policies in this state. So we know our utility companies are doing this work. If they're following, legally they're doing this work in other municipalities, and they're not being told to in St. Louis. So we're trying to change that. What's next? Continued working groups with utilities, city contractors, administration, and relevant departments. We're working to get a meeting scheduled here within the next couple of weeks, and I've been meeting with utility companies individually as well. and anyone who's reaching out to me, I'm taking their feedback. So what also will be coming soon is a committee substitute with the feedback that we've gotten to make this the most actionable, practical, fair, understood, all of those things, bill that we can possibly get to. Because at the end of the day, this is really about coordination and making sure that the work product for the city of St. Louis residents and visitors and anyone using is a good work product. So that's what we're getting to. In the next 2 weeks, we'll be taking that feedback in and working to provide a committee substitute. So if you have feedback, please make sure to submit. And something else to looking forward to in the future, there is a ballot initiative, Proposition T, a ballot measure, not initiative, rather, ballot measure, Proposition T, on the ballot this November. Alderman Browning worked to pass that with the support of the. Is that right? No. Okay. So Proposition T was passed. It is on the ballot. It was signed by the mayor, and then that is something in which, in talking about what a Department of Transportation might look like, a formation of a utility coordinator role is something I've heard Alderman Browning talk about at length. So this is something that's kind of in the possible consideration for this bill as well. And so at this time, I have a moment here for questions. I believe we have several people signed in. But before we do that, does anyone on the committee want to ask any questions before we allow for public testimony?
No.
Okay. Well, I would like to again really say thank you to everyone who's here and the utility companies who've already done such thorough jobs providing feedback. I think everyone understands that we want to coordinate and have a better practice so that the city of St. Louis gets better results. And I'm happy to open up the floor now to public comment. If anyone who is planning on speaking from the public can go ahead and raise their right hand now, and we'll get that taken care of. If you can right hand from the public. Okay, we just have one person from the public, great. All right, if you could swear that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Okay, thank you. So you've taken care of that, and we'll move with the first speaker.
Our first speaker is Nancy Cross from the mayor's office.
Wonderful. Thank you, Director Cross, for coming, and please go ahead.
You need, Nancy, there's a button you need to turn on.
You
Right
and
there.
I from the same decade.
Okay,
Thank you, Alderman Vollmer.
my pleasure.
Good afternoon. My name is Nancy E. Cross, and I'm the Executive Director of Operations for the City of St. Louis. Director Williams, who's the Streets Department Director, had a conflict with today's meeting. I'm speaking on behalf of the administration. I'm really going to talk more about where we are in the process and what we're trying to get to at this point on Board Bill 104. In late spring, early summer, the mayor's operations staff reached out to all of the utility companies who perform work in the city to discuss the current status of how their work is done and how there can be more collaboration with the Streets Department so that the work is done efficiently and beneficially for the citizens and visitors to the city of St. Louis. Alderwoman Schweitzer and Alderman Browning were invited to attend the meetings and did, as they had shown a specific interest in the subject matter. The real purpose of the meetings was to bring everybody together because we don't really talk to the utilities regularly unless there's a problem with one specific, but to try to get everybody in the same room because we knew we had 5 arterial roads that had been funded to be paved by ARPA money, and we didn't want to pave those roads and then have the utilities come back and start digging them up all over because we know, as everyone is here and the presentation shows, the citizens that get very frustrated when they see a road paved and then it comes back. What we learned during those meetings was that the utility companies sometimes talk to each other, but don't always talk with the administration or the streets department, except on their one specific item that they're working on. And so what we're trying to do long-term is figure out how all the plans can kind of coordinate. So when we are doing work on a street, all of the work is done as much as possible, and then we move to the next location. That will not happen for a few years because the utility companies are ahead of the city in that they have 3 and 5 year plans where the city has not had a 3-year, 5-year plan. The current director is working towards that. Separate from that issue will be if we create a 3 or 5 year plan of paving, we will also need to we will also need to come up with a paving fund or some way of funding that ability to pave long-term streets. Part of the solution we are not there yet. Part of the solution could be that we work with the utilities and they pay for some of it. Part of it may be some paid by the city. But long-term, we want some type of coordinated plan where everything is getting done in a way that benefits the citizens and actually also visitors to this area in the future. We have also met with the administration has met with Alderwoman Schweitzer and Alderman Browning on this bill, and as they are aware right now, the administration is in favor of a solution to the concerns raised by the Alder people as well as the citizens regarding utility work and the conditions of the streets. However, at this time, the way the bill is currently language-wise set out, we are not in favor of the bill as currently written. We are hopeful that continued conversations and changes made to the bill's language will bring us to be supportive of the bill. And I want to make you aware of one other thing. On behalf of the Streets Department, there's going to be a change in current policy. Under Ordinance 70924, that is the current, what they called Dig Once bill that was passed many years ago. Sometime during the onset of COVID, a decision was made by individuals in the prior administration to cease enforcement of that ordinance. So during that time frame, probably starting in late 2019, mostly in 2020, they stopped collecting fees from the utility companies if they were doing work to repair the street. So if a street was torn up and the city was repairing it, prior to 2020, people would the utility companies would give money based on a formula, which we're still trying to work through as to what that was, that they would have the Streets Department pave that area, but there was money going into a fund. That has stopped during COVID and has not restarted. So the Streets Department, and some of this is based on our conversations with the Alder people previously, is that we are going to notify the utilities that moving forward, we're putting that ordinance back into play, in fact, trying to enforce it going forward. And there will be letters that communicate that compliance with the current ordinance is required and will be enforced. That's for taking this step now while we all try to ensure what's going to happen down the road with Board Bill 104, but we want to correct that issue as we move forward. So at the end of the day, we believe that we all want a policy that has a process that works for everyone, and we're hopeful that as we move forward, we're able to come back and say that we support the bill. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mr. Castro, AT&T.
Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Hey, thank you. It's my pleasure. My name is Jomo Castro. I'm Regional Director, AT&T External Affairs. And we just wanted to comment on this bill, on this proposed bill. We understand what the city is trying to solve here. We get it that there are duplicate work, sometimes tearing up the streets multiple times unnecessarily, and we definitely want to be part of that solution. We feel like, as it stands right now, we do want to see additional work done to this bill and look forward to being part of that process. So we want to continue those conversations in all shapes and forms, be it red line, conversation, email, etc. So some of the kind of key concerns are really stem from the type of business that we run. So being, we're order driven. Based on sales and based on demands of customers. New businesses come into the city, they order service, we deliver service. So because of that, our orders are fluid. We can't always predict exactly what our needs are from a dig perspective. We may have a main pipe, a main conduit coming through the city, but then still have to dig to connect to the premises of the business. So when we take exception to the January 1st, knowing our maintenance plans, it might be pretty difficult for us to really know what our maintenance service plans are going to be for the the moratorium, the 5-year moratorium that has been suggested. That we see that as a huge issue, where we could have a new street in place, and then a new business comes and moves downtown, and we're not able to service them because we can't dig in the right place because there's, again, because there's this moratorium in place. So hopefully those are things that we can work through. Some other more minor concerns, we get it with the street plates. I think there was some concern with just adding some clarity there in terms of exactly what is needed there. From a permit perspective, for some of the excavation permits, I think it was an increase in the rate from $500 to $500. It wasn't clear to us if that would be every time we dig, because we could have multiple digs within a project. So is that a one-time per project fee, or is that something that could accumulate within a project? So again, those are kind of our key things. Let's see. And really, I just want to stress that we have been supportive of Dig Once policies in other states. So that is not something that we're afraid of or inherently opposed to. And we just look forward to kind of working with this committee to make sure it's not something that hinders our ability to do business here, and also provide vital critical services that really help grow the city, grow the region. I mean, we're dealing with fiber. It's cutting edge technology that really stimulates the city and stimulates growth. It enables businesses. We're also starting to see the city do things differently. So you might have some of these buildings that weren't traditionally, might turn into apartments, right? Where again, it might, and again, becomes service to people's homes, right? So again, we want to just have that ability to serve residents here, and provide them that cutting edge technology. Those are my remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If you don't mind, you mentioned the 5-year moratorium might be prohibitive. You do work in Kansas City, correct?
We do.
Okay, so they have the same moratorium. So I think we just need to find out how AT&T works with that policy and how that works there.
Sure.
Yes, we're just very aware here in the city of St. Louis that while our cost as ratepayers per unit of energy for internet, for everything, is the exact same cost as people are paying for it across the state, but the standards that we're expecting are different. So we just want to make sure that we're getting as good a deal as everyone else. So we'll figure out exactly how you work with that in Kansas City, and we'll try to do our best to make it work in this bill.
Yeah, no, we definitely noted that many of the sections were, Kansas City was bright and prominent on that, and that's not a big surprise to us. But there are still there are concerns.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll move through the committee for questions, unless there's any other.
There's no more comments.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you. So wonderful. We'll move through the committee. Alderman Vollmer, any questions so far?
No questions, as this is an ongoing process. I was sitting taking my notes, but I'm fine today. Thank you very much.
Okay. Alderman Velasquez.
I don't have any questions. I do want to say thank you to Madam Chairwoman for bringing this bill forward. I know that we are going to have an extended conversation, but I think it's a good one to have, and I'm happy to hear that there's going to be some movement on the ordinance that exists as is to do that, but also that we have some room to grow and make this a sound policy.
Thank you. Vice Chair Browning.
Thank you. I just wanted to kind of circle back to something that was said, but I think needs to land with a little more impact. For the past 3 years, we have not been collecting money from the utilities when they carve into our roads. If you've driven around St. Louis, you'll notice that the roads are in particularly terrible conditions, especially since the pandemic. And the idea that we haven't been collecting money is very, very frustrating. I watch as my neighborhood, the one I live in, but also my whole ward that I represent, is torn apart on a daily basis. They're tearing up Shoto right now. And when I say they, I mean Spire. So they're tearing up Shoto, and I understand the utilities have work to do, and we want them to do that work. We want them to upgrade our systems. We want them to upgrade our infrastructure so that we can move into the future knowing that we're going to get those services and have them be dependable and affordable. That's something we all understand, and that's why this is a utility coordination bill. But there's a certain principle of fairness that has to exist. And when we all use these roads, when we are all traveling on these roads, it's especially important that we make sure that we're all taking care of them like we would as if it was the street that we actually lived on. So that's what the goal of this bill is, as I understand it, and that's why I'm so excited about it, supportive of it, and thankful that that Alderwoman Schweitzer has taken the time and effort to put together something that's really aiming to fix this, because we are not interested in keeping the status quo. The current deal for St. Louis is a bad deal. So we want to make sure that we're getting just as good of a deal as the municipalities around us, and really making up for the fact that we've lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in damage to our streets over the last few years. So that is good to hear. We're going to be rectifying that, but it doesn't make up for the condition that the streets are in now. It's something that we're going to have to work to do better at in the future. And that's always what we're about, is making sure that we are progressing into the future and doing a better job. So I think that the way where this bill sits right now is really on the right track. And I look forward to seeing the positive changes to it so that we can make sure that we actually results in better roads for our people.
Thank you, Vice Chair Browning. I appreciate the comments. It's certainly a first draft. No first draft is perfect, and I think we've gotten just a great amount of feedback already from the various utilities and from the administration. So there's already a lot of things we're looking at improving and changing, but we're still all ears for more suggestions. At this time, unless there's anything further, any further people online, any written comments?
There's no one online. Hold up. I heard one person in the chat. Hold on 1 second. Okay, I have one person with their hand raised.
Okay. Can do one more public comment then? We can't see you yet, person with your hand
Yeah,
raised.
I'm trying to move them over.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, Mr. Dogwillow. I'll have you raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, to help you God?
I do.
Okay, thank you so much for being here. Please proceed. We normally do 3 minutes for public comment, but if you would like to start, we'll be keeping track on our side, and thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. After reading the bill and just such as it is, and listening to some of the commentary here today, to me, the issue is not so much that the streets need to be disturbed, and the sidewalks, for that matter, need to be disturbed for utility purposes, for modernization, and to meet customer needs. That's a given. If we could do everything by horizontal boring and never break the surface, it'd be great, but that's obviously not the case. To me, the issue is really the fact that whoever's doing the digging is simply not returning restoring the streets and sidewalks to a safe and robust condition when they're finished. Now, in my own neighborhood, there are dozens of cuts in the street due to lateral repairs and cuts in the sidewalks due to lateral repairs. And this situation has been ongoing for years, obviously. And the repairs that were made are, by and large, slapdash and just completely unacceptable. And to know that the city has basically relieved the contractors, apparently the utilities and the contractors, from affecting these repairs, trying to pocket some money, and then being unready, unwilling, and unable to make the repairs themselves is just amazingly exasperating to me. I can't believe that we would burn our candle from both ends that way. And so I am in favor of this bill in principle, and I can understand that there are discussions that need to be done to fine tune it and whatnot. But as was pointed out, we're not the only city that's facing this problem, and we should be able to come up with a solution that's good for everybody. But in the very least, we need to make sure that the disruptions to our streets and sidewalks are fully restored to a proper, safe, and permanent condition before we let these folks off the hook. Let the contractors off the hook and let the utilities off the hook. And if the city can't do it, then it needs to be part of the work order or the permitting that the city issues for that work. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate those comments. A lot of what you just said is why I think this bill is so important. The number one thing that my constituents want to see, besides just general safety in our city from crime, is quality streets and city services that are delivered in a timely manner. So this is something that I think we have some ability to improve. So that's what we're doing. And I appreciate your comments, and we're trying to make it better for you. Thank you for taking your time today. Give me 1 second. Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to just make any comments? Okay.
Oh, we have a hand up.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great. I know who Patrick is. Patrick Brown, thank you for being here today. If you don't, I don't know if you raised, do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you for being here, Patrick. Please proceed.
State your name.
State your name.
Patrick Brown, Chief of Staff for Ameren Corporation, city resident in the 9th Ward. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thank you, committee, for your work on this. Thanks to the mayor's office for initiating this conversation several months ago. From the Ameren perspective, obviously this is an important component part of our work. All of our infrastructure downtown, as an example, is underground, and so or resides in larger buildings and substations, customer-owned substations. So this is work that we're doing all the time. We try to do the best job that we can to take care of the streets and meet and/or exceed city standards in almost all cases. I don't want to repeat what has already been said, so I think just in short, our ability to get together, after this conversation and hash out some specific detail is certainly of interest to us. We're looking forward to the opportunity to do this work collaboratively with the city and the Board of Aldermen. And I think, something that hasn't been shared at this point that is perhaps equally as important as the restoration standards is the back-end coordination piece. And, all of this is a great idea unless it's not well coordinated. And so the city's ability to really be that kind of central coordination leader, I think, is going to be important for us. As a private company, we certainly have a role. I also want to suggest that operations like the city water division really got to be pulled into this work, and that has to be coordinated, alongside of us. One of the other items perhaps is just the street restoration, the timing and the phasing, and that sort of thing, really important. AT&T mentioned the new customer aspects. We too are responsive, new businesses coming into the city, infrastructure work that's required, ensuring that those qualifications like emergency scenarios are considered and workable, ensure that we can keep the city of St. Louis open for business, and not disrupt kind of the speed of business, if you will. So we're here to be collaborative. We're curious about this process going forward. Look forward to the opportunity to bring some of our expertise to the table and help shape this bill. So again, just want to say thank you for the opportunity, for the invitation here, and looking forward to hopefully coming out of this with a piece of legislation we can all feel good about.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for your years of service to the city of St. Louis, Patrick.
My pleasure.
Great. Wonderful. Well, I appreciate you all being here. I know this is a pretty heavy board bill. It's one that touches a lot of people, a lot of departments within the city of St. Louis. I'm really looking forward to the conversations moving forward. I think we just all want better streets, and that's what it's about, and about getting St. Louis as good a deal as anybody else gets. So with that, we will close the discussion of Board Bill 104 for today. We have no resolutions to review, no committee discussions. Madam Clerk, any written testimony?
Just the written testimony from Board Bill 51. They wanted to.
Okay. There was we had a note from Kelly McGowan of Transform 314 that at a previous meeting, her testimony was misrecorded as being in support of Board Bill 51, but she was not in support of Board 51, so she wanted us to say that for the record. Okay. Moving on to announcements. Any announcements?
I'm old.
No announcements. We'll excuse Alderwoman Keys for necessary absence and hope she feels better. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
moved.
Second.
Previous roll.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 5th, seconded by the Alderman from the 9th. There's been a call for previous roll from the Alderman from the 5th. Any objection to previous roll? Hearing no objection, we are adjourned.